All right, so I'm Shelly. We're back. Steve, thank you. This is episode 7, and I want to finish off kind of the topic about a healthy church and transparency and accountability so that it is healthy. And so I grew up with ministers that were not paid, didn't have homes, didn't have families, all of that stuff. And yet, we read about, it talks about, there's apostles, but like Peter is an apostle and an elder.
1 Peter chapter 5, he says, I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder. And then he gives some instructions to the elders. So Peter is probably because an elder is the leader in the local church. So for a long time, he's connected to the church in Jerusalem. And so it would have been like an elder in the church in Jerusalem and yet apostle, a witness to the resurrection in this larger role.
Yeah.
So that role of eldership continues on till today, but apostleship, his apostolic role, stops. Obviously, they don't produce more apostles.
Right. And so then we read that, obviously he was married.
Yep, married.
And he was an elder. It speaks in, I can't remember if it's Luke or wherever it is, but they went back to their homes. The disciples did, or the apostles did. And so just even about money and supporting whatever the needs were. So some of them worked, some of them didn't. Some of them were paid. Yeah.
So you see all of that, right? There's parts where, like in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul is saying, like, he didn't get paid by the Corinthians, but he could have been. Like, he had that right to be paid as a laborer among them. He deserves that, but he chose not to. He was actually supported by another church. So the church that sent him wherever he was before that had equipped him so that he could go to Corinth and start this church and do this ministry, not depending on them, which is something we would still do today as far as when we're planting a new church. That new church, the church planter, the guy starting that new church, is paid by the sending church, so that the new gathering is it's not depending on that. Now Paul was telling them, like, I chose not to do that so I could serve you better, but I could have done that, and others do that, and others have wives, and
and they had wives. Okay,
yeah. But so you see a little of everything. There's times when Paul is like, he's a tent maker, so he's got a trade. We would call that bivocational. He's got two vocations. He's working in the ministry and he's selling tents in the marketplace. He's building and selling tents, and so he was doing both those things. And there's still bivocational people today who both work in the church and work in a job outside the church. And so, you see these things like in 1 Timothy 5, he talks about elders. Let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. That word labor is a vocation word, laboring in preaching and teaching. So there's some elders who labor in preaching and teaching, and others whose vocation is something else. So maybe like we have, there's a mix of vocational elders and non-vocational elders, and that idea of double honor may speak to pay. Honor is where we get kind of our word honorarium even, and then so maybe you're paying those who labor in preaching and teaching. That's their full-time thing, and others it's not their full-time thing. It's they just do it as a volunteer or whatever. And talks about the laborer deserves his wages. You shall not muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain.
So there's not really a stipulation of one is not allowed to. It is
or has to.
Either. Okay.
I think the principle is that churches should, the idea is that there's these scenarios where an elder in the church, elder pastor, is freed up to do more ministry and more effective ministry because he doesn't have to work making tents all day. And so he can put more time and more effort into doing preaching and teaching and the work of the ministry. And that's a good thing that serves the church.
And so the Jewish people, like when we read of Jesus saw the woman putting money into the treasury, so they obviously collected money. They were used to collecting money to maintain like
the temple,
the synagogue even, and because that was a teaching place.
And the ruler of the synagogue would have been a vocational job. like we read about these guys who this guy's the ruler of the synagogue, right? It would have been his job.
Right. And so they would have been
He's like the leader of the
paid
synagogue.
by-
Yeah.
Okay, so then in the transparency too, one of the things that a term that we were familiar with was that Jesus said, don't let your right hand know, or what left hand's doing it, the left hand know what the right hand's doing, whatever it is. That is what is kind of the purpose or the
so that's the
context
Sermon on the
for
Mount,
that.
Matthew chapter 7. There's a series of 3 things he talks about in a row: giving, prayer, and fasting. And it's the same pattern in all 3, where the concern is, Matthew chapter 6, not 7. The opening sentence is this, before all 3 of those sections: beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. So the principle here is, don't do things just so you'll be admired by other people. Do it for the Lord, not for the applause, recognition, honor of others. Then he gives the example of giving. You give in such a way, he talks about blowing a trumpet, it's metaphorical, but like, hey, announcing to everyone, look how much I give, and I want everyone to see. You're really giving to yourself. You're giving so that you get social standing within the group. But instead, you should give secretly. And the metaphor of, don't even announce it to, like, your right hand the right hand's giving, the left hand shouldn't even know. In other words, do it quietly before the Lord. And then he talks about praying. Don't big, glorious, rambling prayers just to impress the people listening, but pray quietly. It's about you and the Lord, right? And fasting as well. You don't fast in such a way that you're like, man, I'm so hungry, right? Like, well, you're just trying to impress people.
Yeah.
Do these things for God, not for other people. And so that's really the principle is not about secrecy as much as it's about your heart, not impressing people.
Yeah.
And so he's warning against a false, pretentious righteousness that just seeks applause.
Okay. I guess the thing that, how we heard it was so that if I didn't know if I gave money to somebody, then I was not allowed to know what they did with it. And that was the kind of the context.
Yeah.
Where I shouldn't ask. I should just
And so there's no transparency or accountability.
Yeah, and I guess that's the part that feels a bit weird when in the context where Jesus, like, they gave money to the treasury. It was a public giving.
Yeah.
And so people knew it wasn't a secret thing.
Yeah, like,
but it was to be done.
It's my right hand and my left hand, not my right hand and your left hand. Like, I don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Yeah. It's really about,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm reminded about our previous conversation about the elders are not to be lovers of money, not to be greedy for gain.
Yeah.
And so we definitely want to keep people away from, like, that kind of person who's greedy, away. And the caution around money, and there's so much risk around money, right? Jesus talked about it's like really window to the heart as far as we see your character comes out in how you deal with money.
So even in secrecy, I think, like, it's not even so much that you want grandiose things. It's just even the concept of secrecy but versus transparency.
Yeah.
And so then the other thing, the last thing I want to add or kind of to talk about, because Paul talks about collecting money.
Yep.
And why did they do that?
So, in a couple of his letters, Romans, 2 Corinthians especially, he talks about collecting funds from the Gentile churches in, like, Asia Minor and Greece, the places where he was planting churches and doing his ministry, collecting funds for the suffering Christians in Jerusalem, or in Judea, because there was a famine and they were suffering. And it's this picture of unity in the church. So he's gathering money to give a gift to them. And he talks, like, in 2 Corinthians about, like, it's not secret.
Yeah.
Now, he's not, like, naming names.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a risk in going, Shelly gave $1,000 and Steve gave $400, because now you get this, that's the thing Jesus is concerned about, is like the Shelly's better than Steve, and that kind of thing. And even Jesus talking about, well, the widow who gave her 2 pennies gave more than anyone else, because she gave from her heart and she gave all that she had. But what he does talk about is, like, the generous example of the Macedonian Christians should inspire the Corinthians to be generous. And so he says things like 2 Corinthians 8, We want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia, that their generosity was a grace. God's grace in them produced generosity. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. They were poor and afflicted, suffering for their faith, and yet it led to joyful, abundant, generous giving. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own free will, begging us earnestly of the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. And this not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then by the will of God to us. He shares all this because he wants the Corinthians to be encouraged by the Macedonians' generosity in affliction so that they will follow their example. So in that way, he's using one to honoring the grace of God that set them free from greed, that they could be generous in the sign of love and grace, give, and that picture of God's grace in their life should motivate the Corinthians to do the same.
Because somebody was in need.
Because they're helping the poor.
Yeah.
They're brothers and sisters back in Judea who they've never met, but they know are afflicted and are suffering poverty.
Which, if I can wrap that all back into the whole healthy church.
A healthy church cares for one another.
Yeah.
And for Paul, this is such an important thing because it's a picture of the gospel unity.
Yeah.
That Jew and Gentile are one in Christ, and so they care for each other. Even though they have differences, they're one. So, I mean, I think based on all of this, I think what we want to see with our money, generosity. We give to the Lord. We give to help ministry happen. We give to help the poor. We give to help the gospel go forward, start new churches. We want to give generously from a heart, a cheerful giver, not out of giving so that you'll be impressed with me. And so I think there's some level of secrecy in the sense that my giving is between me and the Lord, not to get standing in front of you.
Right.
But then there ought to be transparency, accountability. We want to protect those funds from being used in a sketchy way. So we, as a church, most churches will have lots of policies. I don't know who gives what. I have no idea who gives how much they give. I know what the totals are, but I don't know. I can't spend money without approval and budgets and other people.
Yeah.
I don't deal with money, right?
Yeah.
And so there's layers of accountability and keeping safe distances so that there's no money that goes spent the wrong way. There's not social standing based on money. Rather, there's the wisdom of many individuals and policies that determine these things. Accountable to, get audited. Those audited books are public. All that sort of stuff to make sure it's done in a healthy, godly, ethical way.
That's a beautiful thing, and a healthy church by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That we'll wrap that up
Okay.
now. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.